let me tweet out that we're going live. One moment.
Yeah. Yeah, because I kind of imagine that if you want to use this as your, I would say, regular content or something like that, then it's fine for me, basically. If that helps you, I would say, to have anything on the channel today or things like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I hadn't thought of that. I think, usually, let me tweet it real quick. Usually when I do these, they do tend to be live these days. So I was kind of just assuming.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course, that's fantastic. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries.
All right, let me let the Discord know. And I think we are.
I lost your microphone, I think, when you...
That's my bad. Hang on.
Yeah, okay, now it's working. I hear you.
All right. We're live. Let me just let the people know who are coming into this show on my channel. Maybe after we're done with the podcast, I can chat with you guys, but I'm a guest on the Gamecast, so I'm not really going to be engaging with my chat. This is going to be... When is this podcast going to go up?
As soon as I can get the editing done, so I mean in a couple of days probably.
Okay.
Or something like that. Yeah, so maybe just to help you out here, so
yep.
For everyone who is watching and doesn't have a clue and the fuck who I am. So I'm hosting a podcast in Poland. It's called Raczej Konsolowo Gamecast. It translates to Rather Consoles Gamecast. That's, I would say, what's the whole, I would say, translation of the name. And usually the podcasts are in Polish, but because today I have, I would say, a special guest on an episode to introduce him for everyone that is not your audience, but will be listening this, I would say, from our regular side.
Okay.
The beautiful mind behind Twisted Metal, the Kratos' Real Dead, the creator of Drawn to Death, a game that took its title a bit too literally, I think.
Yeah.
And the author of a very famous quote, "Dickin' in, dickin' out." Hello, good sir.
Hello, how are you, good sir? Listen to me. So I just want to be clear. I know your audience knows this. Everyone knows that. They get tired of me saying it. But I was the creative director and lead director, lead designer, writer on God of War, Twisted Metal, all that. But those games don't exist without all the amazing teams, the Scott Campbells, the Shannon Studstills, the Tim Mosses, the Corey Barlogs. It's a team effort. Yep. But that said, though, thank you for having me. Thank you for the nice words. And be safe in Poland. My God, you guys are right on the fucking border. I hear you guys have a lot of refugees. Do you know what I heard? I heard great news last night, though. Putin,
yeah, that he's sick.
He's sick. He may have blood cancer. How long is that going to last? Not very fucking long. Not very fucking long. And then the goddamn president of China's got a goddamn brain aneurysm. Fuck them both. Karma's real. Fuck you, motherfuckers.
Yeah, but can you imagine? Well, that's of course great news, but can you imagine that this sick fuck probably did it because he was dying and he kind of like wanted to start a war and hurt so many people? Like
that's an option. I mean, it's going to be a fascinating biography, assuming we survive it and there's not a nuclear war. Yeah. But that's certainly an option. Another option is that he really is delusional because of his illness. There are sort of brain disorders that can allow you to really lose grip, of reality. And look, I mean, you saw what happened, in America. It's not like America is inoculated from sort of the ability for someone to want to do something awful, and very few people want to stand up and stop them. But certainly when you're Putin, or certainly when you're President Xi of China, no one's going to risk their own fucking lives to tell you no. And I'll tell you.
Especially in China, right?
Yeah. Yeah, fuck it. I mean, who knows, man? Who knows?
Well,
but anyway, but we're here about the games because people need an escape. They always tell me, they say, Jaffe, and let me ask you a question. I know it's your podcast, but let me ask you a question. So, I get all the time from people who go, Jaffe, I come to your show or I watch your streams because I want an escape from politics. And I can appreciate that. But at the same time, though, as somebody who is living literally so close to the war that I'm sure many of you can hear the explosions. You guys have taken in an insane amount of refugees, which is incredibly kind of the Polish people. Is that an offensive thing? It's like, motherfucker, this is not entertainment you can turn on and off. This is people's lives. Does it kind of piss you off when you hear Americans that are just like, oh, I don't want to hear about that. Talk to me about the fun stuff. I mean, is that a privileged position, or do you also believe there's huge value in escapism, especially maybe right now for the Ukraine and Polish people?
Yeah, well, that's definitely, I would say, a great value of escapism, right? There may be people who actually really, really need it, right? That they cannot, I would say, grasp the reality of what is happening, and they just need, I would say, that not to think about it.
Right.
To be, I would say, perfectly honest here with you, when it all happened, when it all started, like for the few first weeks, it was like really, I would say, confusing, like for me and my family. So we kind of like, okay, so are we like preparing bags? Like, do we want to have a car full of fuel like most of the time, or basically what
Sure.
was going to happen? It was really, like, I would say, confusing, and I couldn't get myself to like, especially like from a creator perspective, sit down and write a review of a game, like for the first, I would say, 2 weeks or anything, because I just couldn't stop thinking about it, right? So but then after, I would say, a few weeks, I sat down with my pals here to Anya and Bartek to record a podcast, and it was really nice that we could basically just focus on what everyone has been playing, just talk about this and so on. So from one side, I understand, I would say, the escapism part, that someone would need it.
Right.
But also, on the other hand, can you actually like be completely, I would say, distracted, like, not distracted, but like separated from politics that are happening around us?
Yeah, you can't. You may think you are, but that's even worse. If you think it doesn't affect you, you're probably the one it affects, not the most, but certainly in a meaningful way, because you're being bamboozled by the people in power. Anyway, whatever. I got it. That's good. It's good to hear. It's good to hear, though, that you have a good balance between that escapism and also like, look, this shit's real and it's serious, and we shouldn't just like, All right, well, it's your show. I'll shut up. What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, so I asked you about what would you like to basically, or how much time do you have, I would say, to do on a podcast? Like, should we do only, I would say, interview questions, or do you want to go, I would say, with the full bananas mode of what we are doing in episodes? And
well, if you're going to keep talking about, if you're going to keep using phrases like full bananas, I'm here as long as you'll have me. I mean, I've never even heard that.
Yeah. Well, I'm watching your, I would say, shows, and I'm very much enjoying them, and
Thank you.
I very much also enjoy shit posting in comments. So
I know you do. I know you do. Yeah. I recognize you from the YouTube comments. I fucking recognize you. Yeah. Do you do that? I mean, I'm sorry, but I got to ask. Do you? Yeah. So when you shit post, and I don't remember any of them. I mean, but when you, when you do it, are you consciously saying this is just fun for me? I'm going to troll these people, or are you doing it because you genuinely believe in what you're saying? And if that's the case, it's not really a shit post. You're just offering a stupid opinion.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to, I would say, those opinions in a while. But no, I don't like, I would say, trolling just for trolling perspective. And usually, I think I told you this already. I watch your shows after the streams.
Yeah.
Because, well, they are done in this hour. It's like close to midnight now in Poland.
Yeah.
And I watch them while I'm doing work and so on. And when there's something interesting or that I don't disagree or agree with, I then go to the YouTube channels, YouTube comments, and just post it like something what's my opinion on a topic.
Sure.
Some of them, like sometimes we disagree with something, but sometimes like the famous, I would say, Days Gone rant that you did, it was like pure gold.
What did I rant about?
The Deacon in, Deacon out.
Oh, when he's fucking the. Well, I've done a couple of Deacon in, Deacon out, so I don't remember which one you're talking about.
Yeah, the one when you said basically like that they are married. Like, how can you basically?
Oh,
like,
right.
Yeah,
the journalist acting all like, oh, it's sexist. It's like, no.
Yeah. Can you imagine how are they talking to their wives and what's their, I would say, private life like? But anyway, I asked Jaffe how he wants to do the show. He wants to do a full show, so we're gonna be talking first about the games we just recently played.
Okay.
Then we're gonna do in some news, and then I have some questions both from my audience and from me, just I would say directly to Jaffe.
Okay.
So it's gonna be like a 3-part show.
Let us do it.
So what you've been playing recently, and I know you've just, I think today played the Evil Dead game, right?
Yes, one moment. Hello, boy.
Do you know if Mom's coming over tonight?
She is.
Okay, can you ask her if... Okay, because I am going to be on a... I'm going to call my friend...
Say hello to your
8 or
son.
9, so she should...
Poland says hello to you. All the people in Poland.
Oh my god, no
Yes.
way.
Yeah.
Every single Poland.
Poland probably has a pretty good punk rock scene. He's really into punk rock and punk pop and all that stuff.
Deserter and so on. Yep.
But okay, so yes, Mom's coming over.
6, maybe.
Just
I'll
you
text
call her. I'm available.
Okay, door?
Yes, please. Thanks, bud. Yes. So okay. So last night we played Evil Dead. Let me give you a clean edit there. Unless you want to keep that in, I don't care.
Nah, just
But so yeah, last night me and take 3. Last night, me and a couple members of the stream played Evil Dead, the game that came out yesterday, and I didn't love Friday the 13th. I love the franchise Friday the 13th, but the game, it was good. It was really cool, but it didn't keep me engaged for the whole time.
it's the same premise, right? There's
Well,
one bad guy and
yes, but it's also just a little slower. I think the difference is with Evil Dead is because the brand, and if I was making the Friday the 13th game, I would probably have considered this. Maybe they've done it. I don't know. Same with Dead by Daylight. But the brand allows for these sub-demons. So, yeah, you are, there's not one big bad guy, or if there is, it can still be represented by numerous bad guys all over the playing field. So the level of engagement at a action game level is much higher because there's more people to fight, more demons to deal with, and things like that. But there's just it's one of those games that I highly recommend with the following caveats. The first one is I've not played it without people I know. I don't imagine it would be near as fun with strangers online. But if you get it and you play it with people you know, and I don't know how sticky it's going to be. Like, I had a great time last night. I have no problem spending $40 on that time I had last night. I'll probably play it 3 or 4 or 5 more sessions, and if I never play it beyond that, I'll be okay with it. But it's very hard to see what they're going to do to keep it sticky. Like, it seems like you can level up at a meta level outside of matches, but there's no real clear sense of what you get for that. Like, I don't understand, they don't do a good job presenting why I would keep playing. Like, last night we played 3 games. We played for like 2 hours, and finally me and my team won, and we killed the demon. And then the last game we played, I played the demon, which was incredibly cool. Like, the powers that you have and the way it controls and moves is incredibly cool. So I think there's a question of stickiness, and there's a question of, does it still work if you're playing with people you don't know? But if you're just like, look, I got a handful of friends that want a game every couple of weeks, and we can live with the fact that if we buy it and we only play it 5-6 times and we never play it again, there's DLC, but they haven't announced what that's going to be. I highly recommend it. So I'm playing that. I'm playing Rogue Legacy 2, which I love. I just finished a game called Nightmare of Decay on Steam, which was literally made by one guy over 5 years, cost $6 to buy. That's awesome. One of my favorite games I've played this year so far.
It's a horror game, right?
First person.
Right?
Yeah, it's a first person. It's very much like Resident Evil in first person, but I actually enjoy the story and the creepiness more. It's a little more haunted house and a little less crazy bio zombies, even though there are zombies. And then I'm playing the shit out of Elden Ring. I haven't finished it yet, but I'm about 160 hours into that. I adore that. And I'm also playing Loot River, which is great, which is very, very cool. That just dropped on Xbox. And I think I'm playing one more console game. What am I playing?
Horizon.
No, not yet. No, I'm doing WWE because I'm prepping for Jaffe Mania, which is going to be a bunch of game developers and game journalists and game executives fighting it out in the ring. I'll have more news on that down the road. But I'm playing a lot. I play a lot of stuff.
So don't you have, I would say, problems from jumping from game to game? Like, what the fuck was I doing here, or that stuff?
It depends how long the break has been. So the thing I've been playing, like Nightmare of Decay, I finished in 2 days because it's a very short game. but like Elden
right?
Ring. Well, so Elden Ring, I consciously don't allow myself to stay away from it for more than a couple of days. Because I know it'll mess with my muscle memory and all that stuff. And and what's the thing about me is I have actual ADD. I'm on medicine for ADD. And so maybe that just works with me better, but I do tend to get bored fast. But Elden Ring, I'm not playing Elden Ring because I feel committed, like I need to finish it. I'm genuinely still just as engaged as I was 100 hours ago with that game. So, but you're absolutely...
It works for you. It works for you. But coming back, I would say to the Evil Dead game, that's I would say is the like problem in general with, I would say, those games, because we heard that many time before, I would say in the past, like the famous, I would say, flop, or how do you say it, was Evolve, I think. Like
yes.
Turtle Rock.
Yes.
That as a synchronous game that was, everyone was saying like, oh, if you have a pack of friends or you know what you guys are doing, it's gonna be amazing, and it's like never happened, right? That it was
right.
I think Friday the 13th also had, I would say, a similar problem. Then there was another game,
Dead by Daylight, managed to sustain,
and so on. So there's always like this problem of the stickiness. You said it correctly. So how do we make people play it not only on sessions when, okay, so it's Friday, it's 5 of us, what do we want to do? Because that's not, I would say, a sustainable like.
No, well, it's very interesting to me, because if you're looking at these games that are, I mean, it's a really interesting to me and fascinating problem and challenge of design. And I think if you look at something like board games or card games, right? Like my kids are now 18 and 16. But we, and then I also have friends who come over and they've aged up with my kids, not the same age, but they've been around that long as friends in my life. And we'll play Uno, or we'll play Machikoro, or we'll play Splendor, or what, like board games, card games, whatever. And we don't feel the need with those kinds of games to play them obsessively. It's just like, once a month, it's like, hey, let's play Uno. We're sitting around and having dinner. Let's play Uno, or let's play this, or let's play that. Those kind of analog games, people seem to be okay with the fact that it's like, no, I don't want to play any more Uno. There's no meta where I can level up, right? I think with video games,
maybe
there's...
it's because the easy way is in, is it out, right? Like that they are very, I would say, pick up and play like.
Yes, and I also think because maybe they don't require everyone to have the same level of skill, but you're still having a fun time. But but it's a good question you ask about what would make it sticky. I think right now the solution the game industry has found is like the meta. And I don't mean the meta like in Hearthstone, although I love Hearthstone. I'm playing that a lot too. But I mean the meta like what sits above the core game. So, I love the game, but now I'm chasing the cool ability or outfit. So let me play 20 more games to level up, and now I can get the cool silver chainsaw that hooks onto Ash's arm that also gives him a spin attack or whatever, Without those things, a lot of the multiplayer games die very, very quickly. But
also on the other hand, I think Among Us is kind of also in that like group of games, because it's also like the deceiving part and like tricking others into that you are not. There
are some.
And that sticks, but also I think Among Us like was a hit because it was so easy like to jump into, like if politics can do it, then literally like rocks on the street can basically start playing it.
Right, and the Jackbox Party game as well. I just downloaded and we played the other night on my stream Riff Tracks, which I don't know if you're familiar with it, but so and you're absolutely right. There's that ease of I bought the game, I invested the money, it was like $30 or whatever it was. Everyone else can play for total free. They don't have to have a PC or a console. They just play on their phone if they want to. Yep. And so there is an ease of entry. There is also a very heavy social dynamic, which is addictive if you're into the people you're playing with. But I think when you're talking about games like Apex Legends or Evil Dead or whatever.
Big hits.
Yeah, those tend to be... look, I've tried to make 3 of them. The last 3 games I made were online multiplayer specific. Calling All Cars, Twisted Metal 2012, and Drawn to Death. I never came close to understanding that market in terms of how to speak to them and get them addicted and get them excited. So I all I can do is sit back and be fans of online multiplayer when something comes along that I love, like Hearthstone. But if somebody called me and said, Jaffe, come work for us at Apex Legends, we want you to be one of the lead designers, I'd be like, I don't have a fucking clue why your game works. So
yeah. You probably need a ton of data like that they are collecting and so on, just to make up, I would say, what the audience wants.
Yeah.
And speaking about audience, I think they did it to the Friday the 13th game, that there was some Twitch something like that people that watch the streams could like alter the game and so on. I think that's something. Is there something in Evil Dead like?
Well, I don't know if it's going to make it more sticky. It depends on the game still, but yeah, I love that. I mean, we were playing on my stream a game called Bloodshore, which is an FMV action game about. It's kind of like the Hunger Games, but it's like these guys and girls. Airdrop. It's like Hunger Games meets Fortnite, which is kind of the same thing. But they airdrop onto this island, and they have to kill each other. And all you do as the player is, you're just making choices. Does he kill this person or kill this person? It's like Dragon's Lair but slower. And you can turn on a streaming mode, and then when the streaming mode is on, the game doesn't have a timer. So I would then go to my YouTube audience, and we would put up a poll. And that was a great deal of fun. And I plan on doing a lot more of those kind of games. So yeah, I think when you can engage the audience, if you're doing it for streaming, I think that's the best. But again, those don't tend to be sticky either, because it's not like we're going back and playing Bloodshore, But there are some that there are some that do. I mean, I'm sure it'll come.
Yeah, but they don't hit those marks. So I, on the other hand, basically I'm like the type of player that actually selects, I would say, like a few games that he wants to have active, and I play them until I finish them. I don't like when I have more than, I would say, 3 games.
So what are you playing? What are you playing right now?
So what I've been playing, right now I'm playing Ghostwire Tokyo. That's the open game. But I finished 2 games recently. I was having some business traveling to do. That's when I usually pick up my Vita and play something on it. So my daughter, who is 4 years old right now, she actually liked the Sonic racing game that was recently added to PS Plus.
Right, it's a great game.
But she also likes to play on the Vita. So I bought the Sonic All-Star Transformed game on the Vita. But there's just, I would say, 9 characters to play with at the start.
Okay.
So I'm playing the career mode just to unlock the characters, so she has more stuff to play with. So I played it, and actually, when I was doing a bit prepped for the episode, I noticed some similarities between the game and Kinetica. That you probably
I worked on Kinetica for a very small amount of time, but yeah.
So it's fun. It's somewhere in the middle of, I would say, Mario Kart and Crash Team Racing. So when it goes to those fun kart games, Crash Team Racing is more on, I would say, skill side. You really need to know what you are doing to be fast. To do, I would say, good. There's a lot of skill into it. And also Mario Kart, on the other hand, is very heavy on the pickups. You can have, I would say, a crappy race, but then you have a nice
pick up at the end. Yeah,
pickups, and you basically win the race. So Sonic is somewhere in the middle. I think that's nice that they found their ground.
I love that game, but the thing, there's 2 of them, and I always get them mixed up. There's one that I think is excellent, and the other one's just okay, but I don't remember which one is which.
So I'm playing the one where you transform to other, to a boat, to
a plane.
Mid-race.
That one's pretty fucking good. That one's pretty good.
That's good, and I like that basically it changes also how you steer the boat, how you steer a plane.
Yeah.
So there is fun to it, and the tracks shift. So it's really fun. It's really good. But I would say the similarities between Kinetica, what I found is in Kinetica, where you jumped, you could do those flips,
tricks and shit. Yeah.
You get a boost when you landed a good trick after, I would say, a ramp or something. So that's also that in that Sonic game.
Well, but to be fair, that was from we all got that from Tricky, from SSX Tricky from EA.
Yes.
That was the first game. I guess Tony Hawk. No, I think Tricky was the first one I can remember that when you did tricks and landed them, it added to your boost meter.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
but I will
Yeah,
tell
yeah.
you in Connecticut, a mechanic that was totally all mine, that I thought was brilliant, that I thought would have been copied from here to the moon and no one ever gave a shit,
Yeah.
was the ability to siphon off when you go over a boost pad. You could either use the boost when you went over it, or you could press down, I think it was R3, and siphon the juice into your meter and kind of bank it and use it later. And I was like, oh, that's fucking brilliant. And nobody gave a shit. Nobody used it.
It brings a bit of strategy into the game, right?
Clearly nobody wanted it. But the group that made the Sonic game is at least part of the group was from Sumo Interactive, and that team sadly has just been purchased by Tencent. But that said, they made a wonderful arcade racing game last year called Hot Shot Racing. And it's on all the systems. It looks like Virtua Racer from Sega back in the day. Hot Shot Racing. It is just fast and smooth as butter, and it's a fucking blast. So if you like arcade racing games, check that out. It's excellent.
I also heard that the Hot Wheels game is also kind of good.
It's great. It's great. Yeah. It takes you a little bit of time to get used to the driving, but once you start to learn to drift and really get the speed up, it's addictive. It's a wonderful game.
Yeah, so I also heard that. So the second game that I played when I was, I would say, away and I finished, it was PES. That's the
really Phil
old...
Fish, the game with the little okay.
Yeah. So I never played that because I would say when all this, I would say, indie revolution started on console, I was like the still, I would say, my AAA games are, I would say, the shit and so on. So yeah, we all had that moments. We were all young ones, and I think the game that changed me was actually Thomas Was Alone. So when I played Thomas Was Alone, and when I see that you can actually have a game with squares, like nothing else, and a good narrator, and the game was actually really special, and it was like moving and so on. That kind of what opened my eyes that you can actually have a platforming game with squares and like tell so much with it. And that was what opened my eyes basically to also look a bit, I would say, further than just, I would say, the really big games. But coming back to FES, I really enjoyed it, but one mechanic that I don't like about it is with the secrets that you find in them. And it's funny because I also recall the whole Metroid Dread drama with you. Do you know that it's actually written in Wikipedia that you're the like creator of Twisted Metal, Kratos, and so on, and there's like, and also he like spawned the whole Metroid Dread like drama. That's so funny that actually this is something. But I agree with you about this Metroid Dread stuff. Like, it shouldn't be there that you just have to spam randomly, I would say, with weapons on something that is not any way hinted that it's like the main path. So I'm all, I would say, with you. I understand the same thing. So in FES, and this one might be like a spoiler to someone who never played the game, but there are a few secrets there that you know that there's like in the room there is something, like there is like this question mark about in the map that you know that there's some trick to get a secret here,
right?
But you're not completely don't know what to do. And actually I spent like minutes in some of those rooms like figuring out what should I do. Is there like a button combination? Do I need to like twist the character in some ways and so on? And it actually turns out that after you beat the game, you unlock something that is called first-person view. And then when you come back with this to those rooms, you can actually like see there are some instructions like, but it's only in this person view. So I kind of like, but shouldn't this be like somehow like hinted that to not waste time looking for something that is not there?
The ironic thing about, whether you're talking about FES or whether you're talking about Metroid or just games in general, the ironic part to me is that if you actually enter into discussion about games and design and the psychology of games, and if you're really a fan of games, not just like I like to buy games, but like if you like to design them, if you like to study them, take them apart, if you love the business, it's almost like you're not as welcomed, because like the stuff that you're saying, like or the stuff I was saying about Metroid, you know, I ended up having a good time with the Metroid stuff because I was like, I was getting views, I was making a lot of money in advertising. Yeah. And I just thought a lot of these people were fucking morons. I was just like, you're not listening to what I'm saying, and so I'm just going to go ahead and just, you know, drive you nuts and make some money off of it, right? But ultimately, though, I mean, it's like you can't. There's some, and it might be generational. I mean, you're obviously younger than I am, but it's like there is a very vocal, I don't know if they're majority or minority, group of gamers on the internet that only want you to praise what they like. And if you are like nuanced and you're like, well, I can appreciate this about it, and like even Evil Dead, right? I'm telling you, Evil Dead is not necessarily a perfect game, but for what it is, I loved it. I had a great time. But there's a lot of gamers, if they're in love with Evil Dead, the brand or the game, they would act like I just said something blasphemous. And I find that fascinating that you've got an individual, a group of individuals that somehow were raised with the idea that any criticism or any discussion that's not just blowing sunshine up your butthole is somehow makes that person your enemy and someone worth shutting down. I've never seen such a thing. I mean, I don't know where that comes from.
Yeah, so it's like, I don't know, it's a problem of like open-mindedness, or how would you basically call it, or being okay with someone else's viewpoint. Like, I don't know how would say basically how to explain it, but I also like, I'm seeing it. We had a discussion about the Horizon like beginning, right? And it's different for both of us, what we took out of it, but both parts are fine. Both takes are fine. That's my perception, right? So I'm fine that I joined the first half of minutes. It was engaging for me. But I'm also very much fine with you saying that it was boring for you. Well, okay, that's what happens.
Right.
I think when I was actually writing the first Horizon review, and I was praising it and so on, someone tweeted at me and said, I played 2 hours of it and didn't like it. And I wrote back, okay, like,
yeah, right.
What, like, fine. And he was like very angry that I'm not engaging with him, like trying to like change his mind. But what I said, okay, but you played it and didn't like it. That's fine. Like, what can I do basically or what do you expect me to do to change your mind? So about Fez, and mostly it's a really good game. When the perspective change actually clicked, that it's not just, I would say, just a perspective change, but you are having fun with it. That's also, I never seen it in any other games like mimic it or right now. And Fez is like, I don't know how many years.
10 years or something. I want to say, I mean, you get a little bit of that. I mean, I didn't play much Fez at all, but you get a little bit of that in like, Nintendo had a game on the Wii U, like Toad's Treasure Tracker, and then there was also a game right now. There's a Lego game where you're having to sort of rotate the space to find. It's not the same thing, but there is that same sort of mental muscle that gets scratched of like, if I see it from this view, I start to have a different relationship with it. But you're right. I mean, Fez kind of came and stormed the beaches of that particular subgenre.
Yeah, it was one of the first, I would say, indie games that started this whole, I would say, revolution. So I'm glad I came back to it and I played it on the Vita, finished it. Great game. If anyone hasn't played it, it's like a few hours long and really good. So I
have to say about that, I had the most. I had a really interesting question. Somebody wrote in. I think it was on YouTube. I don't remember. Maybe they called in. And he was saying, you know, I love horror games, but I love the PS1, PS2 era. But right now, obviously, they're not making those at AAA or AA. But he says all the indie games are these kind of pixely things like side scrollers and stuff. And when you do the very simple math and go, oh, you know, for a long time, the age of the people making those indie games were the kids who were, or the people who were kids when Super Nintendo was, you know, in Genesis. So they're emulating what they grew up with. Well, now you're starting to see the PS1 kids become developers, and you're starting to see like Nightmare of Decay, and even more than that, you're starting to see with Unreal 5. I saw a guy, it's never going to be easy compared to like making a YouTube video, but I saw a guy posting last night saying, you know, He says, back in the day, I started making Quake maps, and that was all I could do. And he's like, now I'm making an open world shooter in Unreal 5, and I just started this morning, and it's not ready, it's going to take years probably, but he's got a guy with a gun walking around a photorealistic environment, interacting with the space, and it's like, you know, what the fascinating thing is, having gone through the industry and seen tech people, especially, with their minds blown by, oh my God, look at the dinosaur on PS1, or oh my God, look at the water on PS2. How can we do this? This is amazing. And now that's just like, here's an engine. You can do that in 5 minutes. I mean, the fact, the games that cost $300 million today or $200 million today, in 20 years from now, we're going to be watching videos of your kid or your kid's contemporaries going, oh yeah, I made this game. It looks like a Naughty Dog game. They won't say that, but you know, and they will have made it in a couple of days. It's fucking amazing. It's fucking amazing.
Yeah, so I had the same feeling when I was watching the recent, I would say, Nintendo Indie World showcase. And there were games that were created by one person or something like that. Like, I think there was this like crab game that Souls like crab game underwater that looked like Dark Souls, and there was a guy by those two developers.
Okay.
And I was like, wow, I would say the games that are now done by one developer or solely or by two guys are just like amazing, like from this perspective, that basically now you don't need a whole team to create those games. Well, you never did. There was always those like one person games, like Stardew Valley was done by one person.
Sure.
But now those games look like a whole team was behind them, and then you look, there were like two guys.
Yeah, eventually maybe it will be like, just, you know, I mean, it will be. You and I will probably be dead, or maybe you'll just be about to die and I'll have already died. But, you know, eventually it's going to be one person at a keyboard or a microphone like this talking to AI going, okay, I want to try a giant Antarctica setting. There it is. Okay, and I want to have some Yetis, like abominable snowmen. And then the Google brings up like, you know, which of these 20 images do you think you want to merge to make your Yeti? It's like, no, I want to see more Yetis, you know? I mean, and then suddenly, okay, and I want to be a lady who's able to fight Yetis with psychic power. I mean, you're going to be able to talk to the AI and create your game, and you're not going to need a team. And we know, I mean, I'm not pieing in the sky here. That is coming. You can already play with these apps where it's like, search up pictures of David Jaffe and buttholes, and have the AI just create a David Jaffe butthole picture, and lo and behold, there it is. You know, so it's going to be amazing.
You showed us your butthole quite recently.
Oh,
how
clean
it is.
Oh, yes. And let me. I have them. I'm going to start carrying them in my wallet.
You should give them away to new members.
Look at that butthole. There's no poo. That's not poo. That's the camera. There's no poo in here. But let me tell you.
So congratulations
on
finishing the colonoscopy.
No. I have to tell you. So, so when you're my age, I'm 51, and they say, oh, we'll come back in 5 years because we didn't find anything, but you know we want to catch it early, so come back in 5 years again. Until I had a colonoscopy, I was like, oh God, this is everything about it's horrible and all this. I can't wait for my next colonoscopy. Because the drugs they give you, I'm not even fucking with you, I'm not doing a bit. Yeah. The drugs they give you, you go in, they cover you with warm blankets, and then they IV you with just some kind of chill. You get chill. It's not like knock you out. Yeah. Then they wait for a few minutes, they roll you into the room. And you're like, okay, here it goes. Camera's going on my butt. This is going to be so awful in so many ways. And then they give you another drug, which is, I think, Propofol. I don't fucking know what it's called, but it's the thing Michael Jackson died on. But, and I'm like, well, will this knock you out? And they're like, well, it'll kind of knock you out, kind of give you amnesia, whatever. I don't even remember the thing after that. I was just gone. And then I was back, and it was so delightful to be back with that drug in my system for like 20, 30, 40 minutes. And I'm like, oh, I'll do this every day. You want to look up my butthole? You can look up my butthole every day if you give me these goddamn drugs. So,
it's good. It's good that basically you kind of like ease my mind.
Yeah, I should do a public service announcement just from your show. And just put, it's like, don't be afraid of a colonoscopy. Everyone. You won't know it. You know, you won't know anyone's been fucking around back there. And you get free drugs. Come on, man. How can you complain? It's excellent.
Yeah. So we finished up, I would say, with the Game Pass, and let's talk about some news.
Okay.
I know you've talked about both of them already on your show, but maybe we can move them in some, I would say, interesting directions.
Yeah.
So of course, I would say the two news that I've picked up here was, first of all, Starfield and Redfall moved.
Yep.
Should PlayStation do the same with the next God of War DLC?
Mm-hmm.
And for the audience who doesn't know Gaming and Games, that is our audience, of course we're talking about God of War Ragnarok, but also Jaffe was recently on fire with the DLC quote taken out by a lot of people, a lot of content creators were like posting about this.
Mm-hmm.
You even went to one of the streams. I didn't watch it because I heard the guy on your show, this trash something.
The guy. I was on their show. I was on a show called.
Yeah, but he first called in, right? You first had him on your show.
Well, that's okay. I mean, then you're getting into the weeds. So there's a guy named King Thrash who is part of a stream called The Roundtable. King Thrash called into my show, and again, I don't agree with a lot of what he says, but I don't have a problem with the guy. But he had another guy on his panel that is part of what they call the Roundtable, and that was the guy who just really tried to come after me with simply inaccurate statements about my views on PlayStation and all that stuff, and I was just like, dude.
But even after your stream, I said like, I'm not watching this. I know what those what kind of people there are and so on. So I'm even not watching this. So coming back, I would say the topic of God of War Ragnarok. A lot of people are saying stuff like, oh, the holiday is now for the taking for PlayStation, right? There's nothing there basically. If PlayStation now like ships God of War, is able to ship it in December, that's gonna be great because they will be the only ones. And my take on it is like, look, they are releasing God of War Ragnarok to sell PS5s, right? That's the most part of why you have exclusive.
That's the only reason. It's the only reason.
The only reason is to sell hardware, basically, right? That's their main purpose of their existence. So if the consoles are not on store shelves, like to buy,
or to sell subscription models, but still to sell something, they exist to drive sales to something even more lucrative than the individual.
On the PlayStation side, it would be hardware. On the Xbox side, it would be basically Game Pass to sell this. And I'm like, this is a perfect occasion to actually move it now, because basically you don't have the consoles. The competition is shitting the bed right now. So even if you move it, it's only gonna work better for you until you probably have more consoles actually to sell them to people. Yeah. So that is my take. What do you think about it?
Well, I mean, I would you move it? This is the challenging part, right? So, and for some reason, my mind is going to the sequel to Top Gun, which is coming out Friday here in America.
Oh, I'm going to watch it.
Yeah, and the reviews have been stellar. I mean, they've been like, this movie's fucking amazing, and blah. That's like, really? But anyway, that was a movie that I kept thinking, oh, for fuck's sake, just fucking release it on streaming, because it's been moved 7 times because of COVID, right?
Yeah.
And there is it was probably Tom Cruise, because he's very involved in the making and the marketing of his movies. But there is a sense that someone on that production that was in a position of power had of, I can wait. I want this to be released in their minds in the right way at the right time. I think with God of War, it's a similar thing. I mean, they have to be going with all of their plans for releases. They have to be going, okay, this chip shortage is really throwing a monkey wrench into all kinds of shit, in terms of planning we've had for 5 years is now having to be rethought of, So I don't know what their anticipated output of hardware is going to be come Christmas. They don't know either, but I'm sure their projections are, at least within 60-70% accuracy. So I think without knowing those, we're just guessing. But I don't think Starfield has anything to do with that, though. I think Starfield, I think if you were going to play Starfield this Christmas, and I was, and you were going to play God of War this Christmas, and I was, nothing was going to stop me. It's not like, oh, well, now I'll pick God of War. I mean, the number of people who only get the ability to get one game during the holiday season, that's meaningful if you're that person. You don't have a lot of money and you got to make a choice. But for most people who have the money or are getting gifts or whatever, if you have both hardware, you're going to get them both anyway. So I think the bigger thing is just we don't know what Sony knows about the projections of hardware, and we don't know how far along the game is. I don't think it's shipping in 2022. I think it's shipping next year. And I think, I think more than anything, what it really does is shine a light on the... Sean Layden talked about it being AAA being unsustainable because the budgets and the audience isn't growing for those games. But and I think that's true. But I think you're kind of seeing when you hear him say that, it sounds like he's only talking about, oh, we'll never make our money back. But what you're also a side effect of that though is the importance on individual titles to make their dates now, because if Sony doesn't ship God of War this Christmas, they've got Forspoken, which I think, given that it's a Square game right now, everyone's up in the air on if it's going to be good or bad. I think Stray, you don't want to lay Stray's great because it comes from Annapurna and they're great, and it's got
a system seller.
No, I mean it probably could be game of the year for a lot of people, but it's not something that's going to make somebody go drop $500 on a PlayStation. I think Microsoft potentially is in a better position because, well, this is funny. So on one hand, you could say Microsoft's in a better position because they have shown willingness to spend a lot of money to compete. So it's like, okay, it sucks we're not getting Starfield. Phil, open the checkbook and pick up 2 or 3 third-party games and make them exclusive for the holidays, put them on Game Pass, make them exclusive for a year, whatever. But games have gotten so expensive to make in the AAA space that there's so few of them now that what is there to buy? Is he going to get Gotham Knights, which isn't that exciting to most people? Suicide Squad has already pushed to 2023. Maybe he could drop a huge stack of cash on the doorstep of Ubisoft and get the Assassin's Creed, but they're not going to be able to put Call of Duty out exclusively because they're still trying to get through the acquisition. So even with all the money that they have, there's just not enough content at that level to recover for either one of these guys. If Ragnarok slips, all I can tell you is I think Xbox is going to have an amazing Christmas if Ragnarok slips, because Xbox can at least promise a bunch of shit immediately. Even if it's smaller, even if it's a little older, you can find their boxes easier. People want Christmas presents. And Game Pass, assuming you're not like you were when you were younger, all about AAA, it's an incredible value. So I hope God of War doesn't slip unless Eric wants to slip it. If Eric's like, dude, I need more time. This game's going to be brilliant. He's the director of the game, if you don't know, but I need more time. I really want to ship it in March. I want Eric to have and the team to have the time they need to make the game they want to make. But short of that, I haven't seen anything to indicate that game is coming this year.
Yeah, I also think that if they don't show anything, I would say quite close to summer from God of War, that would be an indicator that it's not coming, basically. Because you need to, need to start, I would say, the hype machine or whatever you gonna call it, like to start working and the marketing and so on.
I think with God of War or a big title like that, I think Apex Legends came out of nowhere and proved that you don't really have to have 7 months of hype train. But so God, in the 2018 God of War was announced for a long time. They only showed new footage or announced a date, I think 3 months before. But I think God of War is inoculated a little bit from the need to have a 6-month runway. But still, I think you're right. The fact they're not showing anything is just, why would you, like I said in my video, why would Corey go in front of a camera last month and not, if the game is still locked in for 2022, you don't have to give a date, but you guys have said it's 2022. Why would you not reiterate that? We have a lot to show. We're excited. We're still coming 2022. I guarantee you it's going to make Christmas, but we're not ready to show you the cool thing yet. He didn't say that.
And he didn't even show, because even if there would be like, and you know, guys, for you being here, here's a glimpse of what we have. Like,
Or yeah,
and
walk
like
around the studio and it's like here's
or a 5-second cutscene with an interesting character, or with some dialogue that basically like that we don't know the characters or anything.
Right.
That would be a surprise. Something like
or
that.
just
That
walk
would
to the
indicate-
combat guys, area of the studio and go, this isn't official gameplay, but hey, I want to show you some new moves we're working on. Just something. I'm not saying
Yeah,
they don't
something.
have that. I know they have that, but
Yeah.
it's just weird. It doesn't mean there's a conspiracy going on. It's just weird though.
It's just weird.
Yeah.
And also, to be fair, like for both Starfield and Redfall, the whole move is for the games itself is only gonna get better. So
Sure.
if I would say you're not one of those guys like that, it's like counting punches. Like in a year, like we have this, you guys have this, and
Right.
and so on. For the game's sake, it's only gonna make them better.
I mean, I don't know what it must be like to be somebody who only likes AAA. There are a lot of vocal people out there that only like AAA. And, your choices are getting less and less and less frequent. So, I'm let's just say I'm glad that never affected me. And you must be glad it doesn't affect you anymore, because if you are willing to game, as I say, up and down the budgetary spectrum,
Yep.
you are eating constantly at a 5-star rated, 4-star rated Michelin buffet of whatever you want. And sometimes it's big and sometimes it's small, but it's always interesting. If I'm just a AAA player, you better have another hobby lined up.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is those guys actually that are not having this, I would say, gaming as a top hobby, and they are not that involved in the medium and so on. Because I started from just playing, then talking, then writing about them, then having a podcast, and having a channel about them. I love to watch the GDC talks and so on. So I'm all over this shit basically. I can have a guy talking to me for an hour about how they were planting trees and level design, and I'm like, this is amazing and so on. So I'm all over the place in it. So like you said, so I'm looking all over the place. But it must have been those guys that have just this, I would say, as in fun stuff to do on the side between, I would say, what to do today, a movie, TV series, or a video game. So maybe it's
or
those.
maybe they're just realizing they're left behind, because in the past the market of console gaming was very rich with titles. It was,
Yes. When you look at the PS2 area and so on, they were like,
I mean,
there wasn't any difference between AAA and, I would say, and anything else, right? There were just games.
They were just games, yeah. I saw this happening. A lot of us saw this happening over 10 years ago at E3, because I was at the very first E3. I was at the CES before E3. To walk around E3 the first 5, 6, 7 years of its existence was to be in a circus-like environment where you didn't know what was around the corner. It was just tons of games, tons of surprises. And then over the years, it started to get less and less and less and less until it was only the biggest games. And you could see the whole show, if it wasn't for the lines, in like half a day. You couldn't play the games because most of them were inside booths and all that stuff that you had to wait in line for. But yeah, I mean, it's gotten to be a very anemic landscape, which is, I can imagine if that's all you play, it's shitty.
Yeah. And also one thing that you mentioned, I wanted to get back, and you mentioned it about the player that has to pay, has to choose on Christmas because he only can play one game or the other. I think this person probably made the decision years back because he bought one of the consoles only, right? So it doesn't matter if Starfield or Ragnarok comes in because he's already only in one of the ecosystems, and he would play only Ragnarok if he choose that console because of the limited money that he has and so on. So there's also not, I would say, any fight between the games for this person. So I think, well, from an Xbox perspective, well, a slip like that only shows, I would say, the problems that we all know they have, like in terms of managing their portfolio. And maybe we can go in this part a bit, because you were talking about Phil Spencer, like he's not good, I would say, probably at it.
I think he's wonderful at some
that Herman
things.
Hulst is doing. I mean, here, like what Herman is doing, basically.
Well,
that was strange because at Sony we have like big boy gamer Jim Ryan, of course. That's like, and we then have Herman, who actually looks after the games. We don't hear this much from Herman and him talking and so on, because he's probably like managing like the portfolio, like which game is in what condition, when it's coming out, and I think I expect this is like his day-to-day work, like managing the portfolio of games. But we don't have that on the Xbox side, right? It's
Well,
only
you
Phil
do.
Spencer.
No, well, you have Matt Booty, who
Matt Booty,
is the Herman Holst. But you know, you don't see him a lot, and so it's natural, I think, that your ire would fall onto the head figure, which is Phil Spencer. But also he is the boss. I mean, the buck only stops with one other person above him, who is probably way too busy making so much more money off like Windows and all of their other shit that to him he's like, okay, you know what, I'll check in with Phil twice a year. I don't fucking know. But but yeah, I mean, I have said numerous times in you know, it's so funny because what my fantasy is that these people who come at me on the internet would eventually wake up and go, oh, this guy doesn't, meaning me, this guy doesn't have a dog in the fight. He doesn't care about who wins or loses. So all they need to do is go, wow, 2 weeks ago, the PlayStation fans hated me because they thought I was insulting Ragnarok, which I wasn't. And even though I went ad nauseum to explain to them that their view was different, you know, I was enemy number one. Well, now, because I'm going on and saying Phil Spencer is wonderful and do not fire that guy. He's done some great work, but he's a terrible manager. And people are, you know, now Xbox hates me. And now a lot of PS people who hated me 2 weeks ago are like, yeah, Jaffe, yeah. I'm like, doesn't that at least give my opinion a little bit more weight? Forget the fact that I've worked in the business for 20 years. Yeah. Forget that. Forget the fact that I have more contacts than most people who talk about this shit. Forget that. Just the fact that I clearly praise and attack both sides when even if you don't agree with it, I clearly don't give a fuck I care what box wins. I'm 51 fucking years old. I don't give a fuck who wins the console war, but they just, it's fascinating to me that they just can't seem to understand that. But with the Phil thing, I think, you know, somebody's like, well, you're an idiot, Jaffe. Phil Spencer's not the one who's making the games. I'm like, yes, I know. I said this to somebody. I said, I know Phil Spencer is not sitting there after work. Everyone's gone home, and he's got the spreadsheet open for Perfect Dark going. Now, should I make sure that this artist is working on the blue costume? Yes, of course, Matt Booty's not doing that. There are people way below, you know. But ultimately, though, it is Phil Spencer's job to look at all of these problems that his teams have had, whether it's the lack of any software, day one hardware, which is insane. The Halo slip, the Halo launch with anemic content, the second season of Halo, which is buggy and still has anemic content, what's happening at Undead Labs, what's happening at the Initiative, and now what is happening with Bethesda's 2 games slipping. I'm sorry, but there's a point where if you're Phil Spencer, you need to go, maybe I'm not good at this part of it, right? Yeah. There were things I'm not good at. I don't have a problem going, oh yeah, I got to bring in some help. But people get mad at me for saying that. It's like, well, the proof is in the pudding. You have no games from his studios. It's anemic. It's crazy.
It goes back to what you said at the start about the people that cannot get criticism about, I would say, their side. When you said that if you criticize anything that they love, I think it's the same thing here. Like the Xbox side and the PlayStation side, basically, they just don't even, I would say, like recall that you were just like shit posting the other side.
Oh, and shit posting. I was just offering an opinion.
Offering an opinion. That's right. And we have, I would say, also our differences when it comes to like about general Game Pass. Like from my perspective, I feel like it could be something that could be harmful for the industry in games and so. But you're on the other side are very excited of the possibilities that it would give. I think we're just focusing, I would say, on the like two sides of the thing. You're excited about the possibilities that it's open. I'm kind of like seeing like, okay, but it destroys a lot of stuff that maybe is now working.
Sure, but what I always say though about that is I identify the very positive aspects of Game Pass for the art form and for the business. But I also recognize that if some of the negative things that a lot of the naysayers are saying come to pass, yeah, then I'll stop liking it. You know, I mean, it's got nothing to do with video games, but me and the family are watching a TV show right now called The Good Doctor, and we loved the first 3 seasons. And now the 4th season is like, I guess we'll keep watching it, but it's not as good, right? It doesn't take anything away from the first 3 seasons, but, you know, things change, and if your predictions come to pass, then I won't subscribe to it anymore. But right now, it's great. And the promise of what Phil is saying is great, but maybe it won't work. But
maybe it won't work.
Someone will always rise up to fill that void. If Xbox shits the bed, then, you know, I mean, hell, you're in, you know, the craziest thing, because I'm working with movie games now in Poland, is every couple of weeks I'm surprised at the amount of game development talent coming out of that tiny country compared to the size of our country. You know,
there's a lot of it.
There is a lot of really good stuff coming out of Poland, but there's also just a lot of, there's always going to be hungry, creative, talented people that if Xbox shits the bed, trust me, someone will be waiting in the wings to come in and fill that market of the people that Game Pass pissed off. It's not going away. It's almost like this mindset of scarcity a lot of these gamers have. Like, if Game Pass fucks it up, it's over. It's like, no, it's over for Game Pass. But maybe because I lived through the crash of '84. It's like games didn't go anywhere. You had to go to PC, but they didn't go anywhere. Yeah.
Nature finds a way, right?
Yeah. Or capitalism. Either one.
Or capital. Oh, that's definitely going to find a way.
Yeah. Which is
so
nature.
The second news, game journals and PlayStation employees, I wanted to write here, not happy with Jim Ryan asking to respect difference of opinions about abortion and talking about his cats. You talk about this briefly, and that's something I agree with you, is that, well, let's just, I would say, the message, how it was like presented, like as a start.
We haven't seen the email, right? We've only seen choice quotes.
I just saw a description of the Last Stand Media episode, and in the description of the podcast, they are saying we've seen the message.
Okay.
So that would
you mean the one with Colin lying on the couch?
Yeah.
I don't think he said. I think there was a report that showed some of the bits of the email. I don't think anyone's actually seen the whole email yet, but I could be wrong.
If you go to Twitter, that's what I believe they tweeted out, that they've seen the message.
Let's see. Okay, well then that is what I think a lot of us are waiting on then.
That will be interesting, them talking about it. But I would say in general, what was the idea behind the message and so on. So I get the first part. I think it was okay.
No. He says the newest fake hive mind drama. This is Colin talking.
Yeah. Pertains
to Jim Ryan's anodyne internal email about Roe, and then he says, which we've not actually seen apart for some quotes. So okay. I think if all we have to go on is the quotes, we just have to make that clear. We haven't seen the whole email.
Yeah. But in premise, I would say that was such a stupid idea to go with the cat thing after that message. It's something like that. You probably, like, someone asked him, HR came to him and asked him, can you write something about this, like Roe that is happening now in the United States? I'm not that, I would say, in it, but also we had something very similar in Poland, I think 2 years ago, because right in the middle of pandemic, our shitty government actually changed the abortion laws in Poland. So it's now almost impossible to get a legal abortion done. And there have been already several cases of women dying because the doctors were waiting for the child to die and so on. So it's also messed up. So we had this in Poland a few years ago, and there were giant riots in the middle of the pandemic. There were riots on the streets also coming along with this. So we are a bit of, I would say, you guys are lagging. What I wanted to say about it, but I can imagine someone from HR came to him. So can you write something about this? Oh, and add something nice to the email to make it sound better.
Okay,
and he came up with this cat.
Okay, that's all possible, but the cat thing is kind of a red herring. I mean, it's if we read the email and the email is as accurate as or as reflective as the quotes have been, and it really is just kind of silly and tone deaf. Yes, there is an aspect to it that it's like, wow, this guy seems, what a bizarre thing to put at the end of your email. But okay, whatever. I mean, you'd think somebody would have said, I don't know. But I don't think that's what's really upset people. The story is that there's a number of people upset at Sony because, Jim Ryan is coming out and basically saying we need to respect people's opinions. That's a pillar of the Sony corporate culture. We don't have to agree with them, but we have to respect them. And I can understand why a lot of people are upset with that. I'm very torn on how to respond to it because I know that if somebody were to say, and a lot of people have, it's a business and his primary job is to help the business, to help the bottom line, then sure, he should have said it, right? I get that. I understand that he's going to piss off some people who are pro-choice, but most of the people who are pro-choice will be annoyed but still buy the games. But if he comes out and says what the Supreme Court is doing is unacceptable to us here at Sony, you're going to lose a lot more sales. Okay, so if you're looking at it purely at a business decision, that makes sense. But I think at least in America, maybe it's everywhere, I don't know, but in America certainly, there are some lines that there are some lines at least that we tell ourselves trump capitalism and Trump money. And I think freedom, or at least the perception of freedom, let's be honest, but the perception of freedom in America, I think for a lot of people trumps the business argument. And I think a lot of people at Sony, especially people who are artistic and creative, tend to be left-leaning. And I'm very pro-choice. I think it's horrible what's happening. But that said, though, I can see how it was probably better if he said nothing. Although, as a liberal and as a pro-choice guy, I would have loved to have Sony, like Bungie, to come out and say, hey, we're opposed to this. But then you're going to piss off about, I don't think there's a way you can win this.
It was an internal email, so I imagine that...
No, he knew that was going to get leaked. There's no...
But I would say, like the target audience of that? Because if I know that this was the target audience of it, I can imagine what was the reasoning behind the message. So if Bungie knows that the majority of their employees are like left-wingy, or how do you call it, by pro-choice, then it's easier for them to say, okay, so this is like our statement, because like maybe the whole studio is thinking in the same way. That's great. But if there would be some, maybe that Jim Ryan message was a response of some arguing between the employees, right? There might be some already like happening, like people like fighting in a coffee, like throwing.
That's right. We don't.
At themselves. And this could be a response like to that. Oh, we need to say something. So either we cannot say one or the other. So let's speak our opinions, which I think is not, I would say, a bad thing to say. To respect other opinions, maybe not in every, I would say, because if we talk about Russia and Ukraine, there's not.
Well, sure. I mean that's where it gets tricky. You're not talking about Pepsi versus Coke or Marvel versus DC. You really are talking about. Well, it's also, I think, deeply rooted in the psyche of, for some people, even though I think religion is batshit crazy, there are some people who are brainwashed and they genuinely feel this shit is real. And so to them, this is worth dying for, because their God has said this is bad, whatever. That's not Pepsi versus Coke. You're not going to get that person to ever really be okay with the other side. And so I don't think you win that. I think you may have a really good point about maybe there was some internal stuff happening at Sony, but I don't imagine it was so widespread that it needed to be dealt with publicly, or like maybe your manager should have called the two people aside, or the head of the team at Santa Monica. It's like, look, guys, come on. We know here's what we think, here's what they think, but we're a team, right?
Yeah.
But Jim Ryan had to know that was going to get leaked. And so in that writing of that email, let's put it this way. If Jim Ryan wrote that email and thought it wouldn't be seen, then he probably doesn't need to be in the position he's in, because he's a fucking moron.
Yeah, he's more diluted than
but I'm pretty sure Jim Ryan knew what he was doing.
Well, he's not a gamer, but I don't think he's stupid.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah. Because we all seen I know that Less Than Media makes fun of the picture of him holding the controller like this. That was, you never hold them like this as if you would be playing, and stuff like that. So my also topic here that I wanted to discuss with you is about, I would say, like putting your own values, I would say, in your in the work that we are doing. Like, is it fine or not? Because I can tell you like a glimpse of what I'm doing. I'm, let's say, in the middle management section of that's what I do for a living. So I'm a manager, I have teams under me and so on, and it comes up sometimes, even in there were times in the pandemic when I had like team members with different opinions, like on a value level. So something about, like, let's say the vaccines, right? There we had like team members who were all very open also to get vaccinated, and we had also team members who were not. And that's why I kind of get his message, because I also kind of had to talk with my teams and tell them basically, okay, guys, I know we have like differences in opinions, we have differences in values of what we think, but let's like focus on the stuff that we are here supposed to do, like what we do in a workplace, and just talk to me like, can you leave this out of, I would say, work, and focus on what is our shared goal, with respecting that we have all those views outside of work.
Sure, but I think that, okay, so, but if you're managing people and you're going into the office, and I don't know what your opinion is on vaccines, but let's assume you believe the value of vaccines will keep your staff safe. You know, at that point, if a staff member refuses to get vaccinated, but they still insist on coming into work, I think you fire that person. Or you let them work, or you let them work at home, because it's not that I don't respect that you don't respect science, or more importantly, maybe you do respect science, but you're convinced that the scientists are in the back pocket of the government, and it's Pfizer wants to make all this money. All those things could be true. But we as a company have decided that we are going to move forward with believing the authorities when it comes to vaccinations, and it's not about debating anymore. You're going to get, in our opinion, people sick, and you're going to hit our bottom line. So if you can't work at home, you can't work here. I think some things are just, it's not a quality. It's like, sorry, but you got to plant a flag sometimes, right?
Yeah, exactly. But you don't have to like fire the person immediately. Like you said, there's always this like, okay, we respect your opinion, so can you work from home or something like that, because we are allowing it or whatsoever.
Sure.
So and so on. So there's always like options to not destroy or judge or anything like that. So my question was to you about this, about like bringing your own values to work, but because we also seen it like in the whole crunch conversations, like that people tend to come to work and they think that basically, well, I just started the work, my opinion should be as same respected as the game designer, like decisions and so on. You talked about this on streams. So do you think that in the maybe, well, you haven't been, I would say, head of studio like for a few years, so you don't know maybe what's the nitty and gritty happening right now, but do you have a feeling that there's just like much more of this, like people coming with their own, I would say, values and principles and so on, and like forcing them on the company, like to have them also?
Well, I know that's happening. We heard John Garvin, the director of Days Gone, talk about one of the reasons he felt that maybe his marriage to Ben Studio was no longer a good one was a lot of young people were coming in to the industry at Ben Studio, and it wasn't. They weren't. Their expectations of what the job was were very different than what he had worked under and that he had directed in the past. So, and the last studio I ran was 4 years ago. And in that, I did start to see a bunch of people that were, not a bunch, but a handful of people that were, a lot younger than me that clearly felt they deserved a seat at the table. And I was okay with that because the studio was small. And when they had good ideas, I'm just like, cool, you have a good idea. But we could navigate that because we were like 15 people in a small little environment. And I was willing to because I'm not always right. I was like, the story I tell a lot is about a wonderful, just brilliant concept artist named Nafisa Tung, whose game is coming out soon called, I think it's like We Are OFK or whatever that.
Yes, the music band.
The music band
game.
thing. Looks great in terms of visuals. I haven't played the game. But, she would oftentimes call me out on things. She's like, hey, you may not know this, but. And sometimes I would be like, yeah, I appreciate your position. I don't care. We're doing, I didn't say I didn't care, but, we're doing this. But, more than 50% of the time, I would listen and go, oh, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought of that. Thank you. We're going to make that change. But I think it was handled in a way where, there was no misconception that ultimately I was sitting at the head of the creative table. And I don't mean that like I was in charge, but I don't mean it like I lorded that over people. I always tried my best and think I did a pretty good job of letting the best ideas win. But certainly, like, there was a story this week about a woman who was a lighter. She did the lighting of an environment over at Respawn. And she was talking about how her tweet was a lot. And she emphasized, capital LOT. So she's a lot. I don't know what that means. A lot of people wanted there to be a female person of color as the star of Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. And she's like, and they said no, and they already had 2 black people in the cast, and so no thanks. And then she's like, and you can guess the sort of makeup of the people who made that decision, probably implying that they were cisgender, male, white, straight, whatever. And it's like, that did piss me off because it's like, it's not, I'm all for diversity. In games, I'm all for what a lot of people on the right would call diversity for diverse sake, because I do believe representation matters. It's not necessary, but if it's good for the story or doesn't hurt the story,
why not?
Why not? Right? I mean, but at the same time, though, the entire team is not privy to all the shit the director knows or the marketing people know or the head of the studio knows. And I get that you might want a person of color who's a female. But, ideally what the studio would say, like if it were me, even if I was told not to say anything, if marketing had come to me and said, look, the country isn't yet as liberal as California, as New York. Eventually the country always goes there, but it takes a long time to drag people into that awareness of, oh, this is normalized. But at the moment, the country's not there yet. And we absolutely want to have a diverse cast, but our research shows up and down the board that if we don't launch with a white normal dude, it's gonna do 30% less. It's gonna do 30% less. And I would have just told people that, but I don't know if that's true, by the way, but let's assume it is true. There are all everything from that to the fact that, there's a million reasons decisions gets made, to the fact that Stig, who was the director, is like, look, you've got your planet you're doing, you've got this you're doing, you've got the weapons you're doing. I'm the director. I'm one of the main writers. To me, this character is right for my vision for what I want. And sometimes it's just, look, he's in charge. Go work somewhere where you have more authority. You're not owed that unless it's in a contract, and I guarantee you it's not. People really come in expecting It's almost like the best thing you can tell a lot of these younger workers is your opinion is only as good as you can sell that opinion to other people. If you can convince someone, awesome. But just because it came out of your fucking brain doesn't mean the whole studio needs to fucking turn and make the game you want. Fuck off.
Exactly, and that's what I mean by like putting your own values, I would say, into something. You're not actually putting, I would say, an elevator pitch behind them. Like, you're not like doing, I would say, a straight argument like, oh, you know, guys, the whole cast of our game is actually like only males. Maybe we should have a female as this like mechanic or something, because it would make it interesting. So you're like putting a pitch into, I would say, the conversation instead of just like demanding something because you believe in like in something. There was also the story about from the channel. I also don't like them, but they had a great Roblox actually documentary. This People Make Games channel. You remember the story?
I remember.
About,
yeah. They were all. He was talking on about the crunch or something and the indie studios.
About the team the team was talking to the publisher instead.
Oh yeah, they were going to Annapurna, like saying, what was the game? It was that road trip game or whatever. Like, the director's not doing what we want him to do or whatever.
Yeah, and they were talking to the publisher about it. So
and the publisher's like, we don't care. Fuck you. You're
anyway,
replaceable. That director's not.
But what an idea to go to the publisher. That was like that was something from them.
Here's what's interesting. I'm 51. You're what, 40?
34.
Okay. You know. The point is, when we're dead, and let's assume this generation gets a lock on the culture, which is fine. That's what generations are supposed to do. You know, I wonder how they can, you know, weld a society together of getting things done if they feel that everyone has a seat at the table. And it doesn't mean that they're not worthy of having a seat at the table, but it's just simply not practical. And so I'm very curious what work is going to look like when you and I are really old and retired. Is it going to just be like a fucking, you know, here are the 8... Well, or maybe it's just like everybody walks around with these little, you know, their phones, and it's like, oh, here's a decision the company needs to make. Do we do a deal with Mattel for toys, or do we wait for a year because Hasbro's coming online and their toys are higher quality? Everybody votes. In 20 minutes, we're doing a deal with Hasbro. I mean, maybe that's the future. I don't fucking know. It's like the Borg or something. I don't fucking know, but it's...
Yeah. Should the buttons on our app be purple or green? And there's like a giant, I would say, survey to the whole company, like depending of what's your pro-choice in terms of color is.
Right.
And stuff like that.
It's like you motherfuckers can't even get off your ass to vote for the president, and you ended up voting for a president that ended up stacking the Supreme Court with incredibly inappropriate candidates and ultimately judges, and you think you deserve a device that lets you vote on shit? Fuck you. Get off your ass and go vote, then maybe. It's almost like if you vote, you get the machine at work. If you miss an important vote, sorry, we turn it off. I've solved it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think there's not much. I think even we I would say extracted out of this Jim Ryan news as much as possible. You even said on your stream that there's not much.
Yeah, I mean, what are you going to do? It's like, you know.
Yeah. So let's see what happens next. Well, maybe there will be some riots and walkouts out Sony because of it. Maybe that's going to be interesting. So now I would say for the third part, there are some, I would say, very random questions from me, from some of, I would say, our audience. My co-hosts and so on. I've sent them over to you, so
I didn't read. I don't like to read stuff in advance.
I kind of thought that
it's more fun to just talk. So you just tell me what you want to know.
Like, is he gonna even read it? I said, nah, probably not.
No.
So my question, that's from me. Is punk in the AAA space dead? Is the video game ecosystem business not suited for wacky punk B category games? Are the times too risky for such endeavors for developers?
I think 99% the answer is yes. I mean, almost by definition. I mean, punk is never in the mainstream. That's kind of what makes it punk, right? It's pushing back against the authority. It's pushing back against the establishment. But
But your games were punk. That's
Yeah,
how
they
I would
were,
say.
but they also, the first Twisted Metal cost $850,000. The last Twisted Metal cost $30 million, right? So I think and that's one of the reasons people act like I'm upset that I'm not making games anymore. And I'm like, I was so right for games for a very specific time.
Yes.
Because when I made the games I made, they were projects from the heart. I understand they were commercial.
Yes.
I wasn't a moron. We didn't focus test, but we play tested the shit out of them and all that. But the visions were very personal for me, from some members of the team. And, those happened to be what was called AAA back in the day. But now, I was looking at, I keep meaning to make a video about it. I was looking at, somebody put some images up from God of War 3 recently, and it was one of the more risque, violent, sexual sections.
Yes.
And I remember just kind of looking at it and going, I would still make a game like that. I don't believe in sexism, but I absolutely believe in, overt sexuality and pushing the bar when it comes to sex and violence and all that. I like Grindhouse. I like that shit. And there was a time where that
was cool.
Well, it's still cool. It's
cool, but that was kind of even mainstream.
It was mainstream. It was popular, and it could make its money back. Now, though, maybe one of the reasons that I don't look at the industry and go, but I still want back in. I'm like, I don't want to fucking have to go through what Cory Barlog went through to get his game greenlit and fly all over and pitch this and get Jim Ryan on board and get this guy on board and get marketing. Fuck off. And then I want to do this. And I mean, I had to answer, if at all, to one guy, which was the head of the studio. And 99% of the time, we never even talk about it. He just trusted Shannon. He trusted me. He let us do what we wanted to do. That was my experience working in video games. I wouldn't want to work in AAA today at all. But, that's how the business goes. It grows. And so is punk, is genuine punk dead? Not to say that I'm some great, flag bearer of punk, but certainly I would say that we're into, at the AAA space, the kind of homogenized, but indie is thriving. If you want punk, just like in music, just like in film, get yourself a Steam account, play the indie games. I played a heartbreaking game last night from a USC grad student, because USC just did their expo for all their college students.
I see you recommending it.
Yeah, and there's like 40 games. You can go on right now, just type USC Game Expo, and you can go online and you can play 80-90% of them, and you can see videos of the other ones. And one of them was literally about this girl growing up. It was a very simple game. You barely did anything, but and how she developed an eating disorder and how she worked through it and how it affected her life and her life as a teenager and all this. And I'm just like, even the other day, there was a game that came out called Acquitted, which a lot of people say is like the Kyle Rittenhouse game, where he's, it's brain dead. It's not very smart. It's not very satirical, but, that's pretty punk. I don't agree with them politically, and I think it's a terribly made game and a message that for them is worth expressing, but it's expressed incredibly amateurly and poorly. But, that stuff is happening. But you're not going to get Sony or even a 505 Games AA to go, here's $30 million to go make your Kyle Rittenhouse game. But to be fair, maybe you shouldn't get that. It should stay in the realm of, we have to answer to no one. This is our pure vision. Fuck you. And that, in and of itself, makes it punk. I think the minute you start getting all this money, the funny thing is, the biggest punk movie that I can think of is probably Phantom Menace. It's a horrible movie, but it was Lucas's money. He made exactly what he wanted to. So it's less about the money and more about how many cooks are sitting in the kitchen. And I think in the case of punk, the fewer cooks, the better, because it's a singular idea.
Yeah, and how much you are expressing yourselves, basically. Because whole punk is all about, I would say, expression from a music perspective. But what do you think, this is a question for my co-host, what do you think about the rumor Twisted Metal reboot? Is there space for such games?
Yeah, I all I can tell you is, what comes to mind is like, for a long time until Quentin Tarantino came along, no one knew what the fuck to do with John Travolta. So is there a visionary out there that looks at Twisted Metal and obviously I think there's a lot to do with Twisted Metal when it comes to the brand, the characters, the world, all that. But if you're talking car combat as the main mechanic, I don't think so. But I also have enough faith in fresh design to go, I'm sure somebody out there might have a brilliant idea, but I've never been able to really get my head around what you would need to do to really make the moment-to-moment gameplay compelling and still keep it vehicle combat. So
yeah, exactly. Talking also a bit about this, I would say, punk stuff. Do you feel like that was, I would say, the main problem with Drawn to Death? That it was very punk, I would say, and the audience was already, like moving past that era? Or
I don't think you ever move past. You never.
I mean, the mainstream.
No, I know, but you never. That's the thing that drives me batshit about the media, the games media. You never move past your inner 14-year-old. You either bury it and pretend it's dead and you act all proud that you're no longer in touch with it, or you find a healthy way, just like you never move past your inner little kid that loves, cotton candy and going to theme parks. It's like
Transformers or something.
Right. And if you do, you're there's nothing wrong with you, but you probably need a little bit of help to kind of figure out why you're so, serious, right? But I think with Drawn to Death, there was a couple of things. I think certainly it tried very hard to be a literal representation of what this kid's life was. And if you think about your average 13, 14, 15-year-old boy, that's what I know, who is dealing with divorce and an asshole stepdad and a missing brother and all this stuff, he's not going to be very happy. On the surface, he's going to be kind of an angsty, obnoxious fucking kid. But we made sure to also go, hey, there's a sweetness underneath that. But, the media, again, I don't think it's the world's best. I love the game. I think it's phenomenal. But in terms of like the controls are problematic. There were some terrible design choices I made that I couldn't see until we were done, that I'm like, oh my God, I get why people are confused or not having fun. But ultimately what also hurt it was a changing of
discourse, I would say.
Yeah, but it was like a lot of these game journalists and reviewers were now, they had gotten pats on the head and they had grown up in an environment where it felt right and real and healthy to shit on their childlike selves and aren't we mature now? The art form is mature. That's why the old God of War is shit. The new God of War is great. Well, they're both great. Fuck you. Right? Same thing with Drawn to Death. It's like, it's vulgar. It's not sexist. It's not misogynistic, but it's vulgar. It's over the top sexuality. It's what, it's a fun romp when it comes to that. And there were a lot of journalists that just would not give it the time of day because it's like, it's ugly looking. It's supposed to be. It's drawn by a kid in a notebook. It's vulgar. It's supposed to be. And again, I don't. It's always a lame excuse for a creator to go, they just didn't get it. It's not that I don't think they got it. I think a lot of them took offense to it because it was like, you're not supposed to be saying those things anymore. We're supposed to be mature now. And say, oh, fuck you. I have no, people are like, would you go back to Sony? Sony wouldn't have me. And frankly, I probably wouldn't have Sony at this point. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I have friends over there still that I have great respect for, but I'm like, I wouldn't want to fucking work at a company where I have to watch my fucking P's and Q's about shit. Fuck off. My whole life, I have been very aware that as far as we know, we get one life on this planet. And maybe when it's done and that's it. Why in the fuck am I going to go around trying to make all these other people happy except my family and my friends? Give a fuck about what you want when it comes to your views of, morality. I'm not gonna push mine on you, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I think I kind of learned it and understood it much more after started watching your streams and just how you deal, I would say, with the shows, with the interviews, and how you talk about stuff. I think it's, I would say, the same way, that it's not Sony wouldn't have you, like you said, but not in a bad way. It's just that the things that you want to do and how you want to express yourself is not something that they are actually now chasing.
No, and they don't make any, and there's no money in it. There's only bad PR in it. And, to them, I put creativity and honesty and genuineness ahead of money. And I don't mean that like they're bad people. But clearly, they show up to work, a lot of them, most of them, I guess, at the executive level, because they want to pay for their houses, their cars, their kids' college, and all that stuff. And that's the most important thing. So they'll toe the line, and that's fine. Most people are like that.
Yeah.
But I can't do that. I won't do that. That's just not in my makeup. And that doesn't mean I'm better or worse. It's just that, I couldn't survive a week at Sony at this point.
Yeah, I also don't think that it's bad for, I would say, those, let's say, punk games or those genres, and so to not be in that place. I think they're perfectly fine where they are, and they should cherish, I would say, the space that they are that they are covering. Coming back to that question from the audience guy that was talking about horror games with you.
Yeah.
Because that's something that came to my mind when he said that the indie games are only, I would say, platformers and side scrollers,
Metroidvanias,
and that's on. But I also think I agree with you about, I would say, the generational shift, who's making those and so on. But also on the other hand, I think those games just have a bigger audience than, I would say, horror games. From my perspective.
Sure, I mean, it depends what you're talking about, but sure, it's easier for a game like Rogue Legacy or Dead Cells or Hades to connect with a much bigger group than a game like, the Mortuary's Assistant, which is coming out soon, which is literally you're a woman working in the morgue, embalming bodies when shit starts to go crazy. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and that's again, that's almost like the industry is so it's like every art form that is popular, eventually when the shit settles, you end up here. You end up with the expensive stuff being very vanilla, not bad. And every now and then you get somebody who can work in that vanilla industry, whether it's Kevin Feige, whether it's Steven Spielberg, whether it's Rob Zemeckis, who can make something with some heart, but it's still very commercial. But the stuff that's really personal or really emotional or whatever, that tends to go to the margins. Indie films, alt music, indie games. And I think that's what's happening. I think the only thing that I find shitty about it at the moment is in the indie space of music and in the indie space of film and television, the people who really love the medium are the more vocal, obnoxious people, right? And the people who just love Transformers and that's it, they don't even care about the conversation. And in video games right now, you are treated almost like a leper by a very vocal group of the core gamers who act like that if I have a game like Unsighted or Unpacking on my Game of the Year list sitting next to Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, somehow I've, Amber Heard it all over your fucking bed. And I'm just like, no, I'm the guy. You're the guy who gets games. We're the guy who loves games. You're the guy who loves Transformers. You don't even deserve to be having a conversation. Sit down and go watch your fucking popcorn thing and don't think you're smart enough or engaged enough or experienced enough in the industry of games, not making games, but playing games, to actually have an opinion that we value, because that's not you. So just stop.
Also, on the other hand, I'm going to come back to the guy that was telling me that he's played Horizon for 2 hours, and I said, okay, and he was angry about it, that I said okay, it was fine with you,
right.
Why is it so different for you to understand that Unpacking was one of my favorite games this year, basically, and it's not on your list. Like, what? Where is the problem?
I think there's a
genuinely don't
psychology there.
understand.
I don't either.
Don't
I don't either. I think it's a psychology thing, though. I think it's like, I need you to validate me because I don't have validation in my life. I don't fucking know. I mean, we were talking about my willing, I'll give up money for freedom. Some people won't give up money for freedom. This is almost farther on the spectrum of, it's not about money. It's not about freedom. I just need to be accepted by someone. Please don't make me feel that I'm not normal in some way. I think there's got to be some under the foundation or part of the foundation of that person's psyche that's what that's about. Because it's like, why do you? I don't care. The fuck do I care?
Yeah,
what
some
you
kind
like.
of acknowledging like himself or something because of it. Yeah, makes sense. So okay, do you still have time, or do you have to go, or
For what?
I have two questions.
Yeah, go.
Yeah, okay. So the next one is actually, I don't know if you have seen someone on your Discord, our Discord, posted a video about Steven Spielberg thanking the actor studio interviewer about a question. Like, so
Oh,
he asked him
I've posted that
I
numerous
love
times.
those interviews.
And the Spielberg interview is fantastic, but they've pulled it off of YouTube. I can't find it anymore. They used to have the whole thing. Now they just have that one clip.
And there's this one clip when he actually thanks this person because he hit like a personal point that he didn't know even when he created the I think
Close Encounters.
Yeah, exactly. It has a very long name in Poland in terms of the title. But anyway, and he thanked him for this personal question. And also on a similar note, Cory Barlog often said that he the recent God of War was very personal because he put a lot of his being a dad, his perspective into the game.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, you already said briefly that you also put your personal you inside of games. But is there a person, a particular feature or an element of game that was very personal to you, that was something you took from your private life and put into a video game?
Well, I think yes, all of them. But I think what was always interesting to me was, and I've said this numerous times, I think Corey's a much better writer than I'll ever be. And so maybe a good writer starts with that or knows that. For me, it was almost like analyzing a dream after you've woken up and you're like, oh, that's what that dream was about. So it took me a couple of months after we finished God of War to realize that was a game about putting family first and, career ambition versus family. Twisted Metal is, at least up until Black, even the new one, was all about family. If you look at the stories of all Sweet Tooth and his daughter and his son, and it's there's something there, right? I've never, it's kind of like the Spielberg clip. If you're not familiar and you're listening, the Spielberg clip, Spielberg's parents were divorced when he was little. It was very, a big moment for him. It affected him greatly his whole life. And his dad made computers and his mom was a pianist. And in the clip, he said, the interviewer says, when the aliens come to Earth, how do they communicate? And Spielberg gets this big grin on his face, and he's like, and the interviewer says,
Thank you.
But the interviewer says, well, they communicate with using computers and music. And it was like, that was him having his mom and dad, who clearly couldn't reconcile, having a way to be together. And so for me, that's more, I work very personally, but I don't work very consciously of that fact. I just know, if somebody were watching me and documenting me back in the day when I was working, I think they could start to recognize this thing here is going to be something he fights for. This thing here, he's not going to care about. And those things that I fought for would end up being the reason the theme is what it is. But it was never a conscious thing on my part. It never occurred to me to do that,
Yeah, so it was a bit what I would call a reverse, Corey maybe started from his private stuff, and expanded it into a whole universe or story, and it was for you that
Well,
you
we all
created
start from
something.
our private stuff. It's just a question of what we know about it.
Are we conscious of it?
Well, like I wanted to make something. My consciousness of making God of War was I wanted to go back to being 10 to 14. I wanted to make a game that made me feel like when I felt when I watched Raiders of the Lost Ark, Clash the Titans, read Heavy Metal magazine, saw Heavy Metal the movie. I knew I wanted that. I had no idea I was also working with the team to create a game about family and work. Never occurred to me. So
yeah. So you must like the Fast and the Furious series.
I love the Fast and Furious. I mean, the last one I couldn't watch, it bored me, but I love it when it's amped up to crazy. And I love the Fast and Furious game Crossroads that just got delisted. It's a very.
You either have the physical copy or you're not playing it.
I have the physical copy. I adore it. It's janky. It's a C-level game, but it's so batshit fun. I'm good. What do you need more?
Yeah. Okay, so the last question, but we already also kind of, I think, touched upon it. You seem to be working on many genres and constantly doing something else, while others like Kevin Levine or Hideo Kojima, Warren Spector were more focused on one thing. Where does it come from, do you think?
Probably... It probably comes from the kind of environment Sony shaped when I was there, which was from Alan Becker and Shuhei and the idea of make what you're interested in. And it also comes from me. Yes, I care about money, but I've always felt that if, and it's kind of naive, but it's kind of true. It's a balance. And sometimes you get the balance right and sometimes you shit the bed with it. But if you make something you're passionate about, that's half the battle. And so I've known Ed Boon now for 20 years of Mortal Kombat fame. I don't know how that man does it. Every game gets better for the most part. The newest one is one of the best selling, if not the best selling, and it's a fucking blast to play, the new Mortal Kombat. I couldn't make the same goddamn game over and over and over and over. I couldn't do it. It's not the same game, but the same type of game.
Premise.
But a lot of that also does have to do with they're still currently working and I'm not, in the sense that unless you are working in the indie space, games are too expensive now. It's like, I'm sure Naughty Dog could pull it off, but if you go to Naughty Dog and say, okay, now we want to make a real-time strategy game because, what's his name? Neil Druckmann's really into that suddenly. Well, I mean, they could do it. They'd probably get the green light, but games cost so much money now that you really want to specialize in genre because it's hard to start from nothing, and
your crew knows how to do lightning.
If you look at Elden Ring, one of the reasons Elden Ring is so great is that it's like the sixth iteration of that game. A lot of people will get up pissy with me when I say this, which is I think it's a very big difference. Like I played Bloodborne last year for the first time, loved it, finished it, it was great. I think they're similar in moment-to-moment combat mechanics and the level-up system, but the open world and other things has made a huge difference for me. But I don't think they could have gotten there if they just started from scratch. No. I think they have all of those games to build on, and then they add this big piece, and suddenly it's this new magical thing that's the best-selling game of the year. It's outsold Call of Duty, which, if you can believe that.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think these days, it becomes much harder to be that kind of developer. It's another reason I wouldn't want to work at Sony anymore. If I got pigeonholed into, you're the God of War 2.5D side-scrolling guy, I'd make that once. I don't want to make it again, but I don't want to make games anymore anyway. I don't enjoy it, so...
It's much fun to just, talk about them.
It is.
And play them.
Play them, talk about them, debate them, discuss them. And I kind of, there's that whole... overly quoted, but still very valid Teddy Roosevelt quote about the man in the arena. It's the man in the arena who does the work and gets bloodied and all that. Yeah. It's the critic that stands on the sidelines and doesn't do shit. And I'm happy that I've already been in the arena. You know, so I don't have to feel guilty about that. I'm like, no, I've been in the arena. Fuck you. Now I'm doing this. Yeah. But end of the day, though, fact of the matter is, I like this more. It's more fun to do this. If someone said, what do you want to do this Saturday? Talk to you about video games and the business and philosophy and put out a show and hopefully entertain and engage people. Or do you want to sit, put on some music, look at your notepad and figure out a new mechanic for Kratos to use in God of War 5? I'd be like, oh, God, I don't want to do that at all. That's so hard. This is fun. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I hope this was fun because I would say I'm out of the points and questions that I had. So thank you very much, Jaffe.
Of course, thank you.
For first of all, well, thank you for the games you've created.
With a lot of other people.
Of course, you're too humble. But I also think I'm on the same boat as always. Colin says that you don't get the recognition that you deserve.
Oh, so I don't. Like, Colin's absolutely right. These fuckers should be throwing me parades. Let me tell you something. I'm serious too. I don't want to parade, but it is crazy. The lack of industry knowledge these quote journalists have. They don't know. I mean, I don't think they have to have an encyclopedic knowledge of video games, but you know. If you're a journalist writing about games and your education of games began with the PS3, sit the fuck down and let somebody who understands things write a little bit. I mean, it's ridiculous what they don't understand. But anyway, whatever.
Well, maybe we're gonna end with this one because there was also this Gene Parks thing. Like quite
I love Gene Park
quite recently.
Yes,
and I'm more on the boat that. I even prefer like journalists that write about games to even not be, I would say, that good at games, because I would prefer them to be journalists first and gamers second.
I would too. I mean, but he's a great.
But the critiques that actually review games or give opinions or do podcasts, they need to know games, and I prefer.
But Gene knows games. Gene is a hardcore fucking gamer. It's not like Gene has been, beat Metroid 5 times. Gene I probably finished Elden Ring. If you follow Gene, which you should, he's always going on about what he's playing. He's not some fly by night gamer. He's as hardcore as they come. But he also happens to have journalistic standards and journalistic education. And he values, I was reading an article he put out yesterday where he was reviewing or opining on Halo Season 2, right? And it was so refreshing, and he was pretty negative on it, but it's clear he loves Halo. He's played all the Halos, he knows the lore, but it was clear I never felt the need to go, there's an ulterior motive here with this guy. Like a lot of journalists are like, I either want to work for the company or I'm trying to build this brand or what, Exactly. With Gene, he's just like, I'm a journalist and I'm writing about my subject and you can trust it. And it's unfortunate that doesn't get, but again, people are stupid. Today's fucking education, at least in America, is terrible. Teachers are great, but they're forced to teach just not critical thinking. The fact that you've got younger people coming after Gene Park, a motherfucker who's a real fucking journalist who's covered crime and has covered local government and has been in the business for 20 years, went to school. The fact that they're coming after this guy because he has an opinion or he expresses an idea about a video game that they don't like. I'm like, motherfucker, this is the cool drink of water in the desert that you're currently trapped in that is reading shit journalism. It's like you should be self-aware enough to go, that's someone I should pay attention to. You don't have to agree with him, but I shouldn't poo-poo him. But they treat that guy as bad as they would treat somebody on YouTube, not that this guy should be treated badly either, with like 5 views. And I'm like, this guy's earned your respect, but you're just too stupid to know it. I hate him. I hate him.
Yeah, okay, so let's end it here. So thanks everyone for watching. Sorry for my accent, for the, I would say, American...
never fucking do that. Americans are so... you speak at least 2 languages, right?
Okay. At least,
At least. How many do you speak?
Yeah. I speak, English, Polish, of course, and a bit of German.
don't apologize for your fucking accent. We should be apologizing for how stupid we are that most of us don't know that French fries, don't come from France. So,
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, anyways, thanks for watching. Jeff, it was a pleasure having you,
you as well.
on the show. Maybe we can do it sometime again.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Appreciate your streams. I will be there in the comments,
All
believe
right.
it or not.
Oh, I believe it.
And have I would say, I don't know, good night? Well, it's 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, whatever. I'm going to go watch the movie The Sadness on Shudder with the stream tonight because it's supposed to be incredibly gory. I can't wait.
Okay.
All right. Have a good night. See you, buddy. I'll see you later.
See you, buddy.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. All right, fellas. Well, there you go. That is the show. I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate the super chat that came through earlier from It's Gone So Far Up. It was a really cute little picture of some kind of controller or some such. I appreciate that. All right, bye, buddy. Thanks, man. That was from, here we go. It was from Drive By Joe, super chatted. Thank you, bud. I appreciate that very, very, very much. I responded to your question, but you didn't say anything. You just gave me a picture, which I appreciate. Hello, Blaze 4K. So anyway, yeah, I will probably be doing a stream this evening. It depends on what's happening, but I'm hoping to do a stream tonight, which is Pot and Popcorn, which is going to be The Sadness, but I'm not entirely sure yet. I'll have to let you know. But go Google The Sadness over on the YouTube. Check that shit out because that thing is fucking gory and cool as fuck. So, Gino Soul, no playing today. I don't know yet. I'm just wrapping this up. I got to go see, if my kids are still breathing and go from there. So I'll let you guys know. Stay tuned. Meantime, at David Scott Jaffe on Twitter. Follow me here. Like the video. Go listen to the podcast. They have a lot of podcasts over there that we just did. And be well, be safe, and hopefully I'll see you guys soon. All right. Bye, you guys.